Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Coming at you on Monday, May 23rd, as we cross the midnight barrier for those of you who listen as immediately as this thing is posted. Jeremy Cohen, my co-host. Hello, first of all. How are you?
Doing all right, John. Avoiding the heat as best I can. I know you are too.
As best as we all can. We both have our ACs on. Hopefully it's not an impediment to your listening pleasure. We don't think that it is, but Andrew's not here, so he can't tell us to shut them off. So when the cat's away, the mice will play. Do you know what's a month from today when folks will be listening to this?
I do indeed. It is the NBA draft.
The NBA draft, where dreams are made of. You know what they're not made of, Jeremy? The
What's
lottery.
That, yes. But nevertheless, we persevere, right?
I was actually so offended. Not offended, but I was like, I think we're on like so many different platforms. I don't know what it was. It was one of the comments in our Patreon watch along. Shout out to everybody who was there, or one of the YouTube comments. But someone was like, when we got 11, someone was like, Macri looks like his soul has been snatched from his chest or something like that. And I went back and rewatched the clip that Andrew posted. I thought I took it in stride. I thought it was fine. I was just like, okay, it's 11.
Yeah, it was math, It's like if you're telling me there's a 77% chance of something happening, that's a pretty high number. Obviously was holding out for hope, but
so was I.
Didn't fall to 12. So something to silver lining. There's always some sort of silver lining, whether it's actually a legitimate one or just
this was
copium,
Listen, there was a 1 in 7.5 chance that we would fall at 12, which was better odds than us getting into the top 4. Yep. So it was a win. It was a small win, right? Silver linings here in Knicks fandom. Yeah, I mean, whatever. It is what it is. It feels like it would have been certainly a nice bonus. Whether it would have jump-started a process that we have been dancing around, I don't know, since we've been doing this podcast. I mean, we'll never know, but now we're at 11 and we're going to talk about obviously the draft today, and that's going to be this cap or no cap. So I wanted to ask you actually, because I texted you about something that I wanted to discuss. Should we save that for the pod? Yes, we should save that.
We should. I will let you know when we're all squared away to discuss it. There's a window for it. We will discuss it.
Because is it a take? Do I have a take? Do I have a theory? What would you call it? I think it's a little bit of both.
Well, it's something that's kind of been marinating in your brain.
Oh, tis been marinating.
Probably ready for the grill. And then we'll see if it's well done or if it's one of those rare takes that we just,
Can desperation be grilled? What do you season desperation in? The salt,
tears?
pepper?
Yeah, there's salt and tears. You could do that.
There's salt and tears. A little bit of cumin. Yeah, I'm a big cumin guy.
Who isn't? It's great. You got to season your meat. You have to. You can't not do it.
You know what? I have nothing to add after that. There's no I feel like last thing before we get into today's cap or no cap on the draft. I feel like there's usually more rumors at this point in the year, not specifically draft rumors, but just rumors. I feel like there's been the Levine stuff, which we don't really need to talk about the Levine stuff, right? He spoiler alert, he may be looking to move elsewhere where, there is a potentially better hope for things in the future. Although if he goes to LA, I don't know how that's going to work out. But there's no other really big rumors or anything circulating in regards to current players. The Mitchell stuff kind of died down. There hasn't really been any Zion stuff. Dame seems to be happy staying put. We haven't heard anything on Beal. Are you surprised that there hasn't been more? Do you think it's coming and we're just it's a fallow period?
It'll arrive. There will be the time during the NBA finals when there are gaps in between games, especially if it's a shorter finals, whatever happens, there will be plenty of time where all these reports and rumors come to light. I mean, the big winner from this past lottery was probably Mark Berman, because now he gets to write about all these different prospects. Whereas if the Knicks had gotten maybe the first pick, he would have had like 6 different prospects to talk about, and then maybe 1 or 2 examples of what the Knicks could do with it. And now it's just, it's limitless what he can do. But instead, I guess we've come full circle to talk about the practice facility, which, listen, I would love to talk about how these players commuting to MSG 41 times in the regular season is a huge deal. I've even been thinking about ways the Knicks could go about changing it. For starters,
helicopter?
Well, not just a helicopter, right? Okay, hear me out.
I'm all ears.
I got a few ideas. I just want to rattle them off.
Please.
You know how there really aren't that many blimps in the world? It's like a surprisingly low number of blimps. So you take 2 blimps. There
are nearly enough blimps. You're absolutely nailed it.
There should be more blimps. This with the infrastructure that we have in this world, that's where we should go. So you get 2 blimps, and then you tie a full-length basketball court to the blimps, and they fly around so that way the Knicks can deal with elements that they would never be prepared for. So they're always prepared. Or you get a boat, right? Like a barge, maybe an old ship, perhaps, maybe not wooden, but like an Intrepid type ship. It could even be the Staten Island ferry that Pete Davidson and Colin Joe spot.
You want to talk about adverse conditions as someone who rode that freaking boat more times than I care to count. Adverse conditions aplenty. Yes. But see, practices on the ferry.
You have practices there. You have a whole workout equipment. It goes around the island of Manhattan. It's scenic. Everyone knows, hey, there go the Knicks. And then it docks at 34th Street or around there, maybe where all the cruise ships are. And then there's a charter bus that takes them from there to Madison Square Garden.
They should have to practice dribbling on the charter bus.
I agree 100%. Or you just have the Knicks show up to Sunset Park where the Nets practice and just claim the court. And then when the Nets are like, this is our spot, the Knicks say, we don't see your name on it. And the Knicks have plastered, their logos all over where the Nets logos are. And Nets are like, well, I guess we have to go to Westchester now. You could build something on top of MSG. You could build it underground. Really, there's so many ideas that are floating around here. I'm surprised we haven't heard more of them. But, another one is we could take the facility in Tarrytown and lift it and move it 1 foot further south so that way it's closer to MSG than it currently is.
What would be so fitting is if Leon Rose's first press conference in however long is in regards to the commuting time.
I think that'd be great.
That is the only way at this point, Jeremy.
It took me 37 minutes to get here. I just want that to be put. There was no traffic. It was very light. Might have been the time. Listen, everyone cares about the commute when it comes to their own jobs. But it's the sort of thing where they're also, if they're gym rats, then they're going to be staying in Westchester. If they're staying in Westchester, they're going to be near Tarrytown, and they're going to be spending a lot more of their time. I'm not saying it has nothing to do. Yeah, it'd probably be wise to have a practice facility in New York. But the idea as well that like the Knicks haven't gotten anyone because of the facility, let's look a little bit more inward. It's the fact that they have had so many executives and coaches and zero stability that is the low-hanging fruit that we can pick here. So we can look inward first and then address the practice facility another time.
I think the Knicks should go about being a better basketball team, and then people will stop worrying about such things as the commuting time. If they ever win a championship, which God willing in my lifetime, please, Lord, I would like some enterprising reporter to ask whoever's on the dais when they're holding the Larry O'Brien trophy, how now sitting here, having reached this pinnacle, can you just reflect on how amazing it was to overcome that arduous commute day after day after day?
Well, you know what they'll do if there's a championship, or when there's a championship again, I guess we could say, the parade will start in Tarrytown and it will continue down the West Side Highway along the Hudson and then finally turn on to the Canyon of Heroes. It might take 3 hours, but so be it. They deserve it. It's to account for all the time that it would take to and from with Tarrytown and everything from one spot to the other.
As long as the blimp is part of the parade. Okay, let's do a cap or no cap. So as always, for those of you listening at home, we're going to make this as all accessible for you as is humanly possible. But if you want to get the full experience, head on over to the Knicks Film School YouTube channel. I could podcast to get Jeremy's lovely PowerPoint presentation as well, which we're about to kick off right now.
Yes, we are. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce us to the most glorious draft image we've ever had. Is the 2003 draft class with their incredible suits, just the pinnacle. I think we peaked fashion-wise on this day. And I just, that line about like, wish we could go back to the good old days. Like we knew that they were the good old, I'm butchering it, but
no.
Good old days till they're gone, whatever. That was this day. That was 2003.
The girth of the pants. Mm-hmm. See, the buttons, the number of buttons gets the most attention. Look at if you're really missing out. So we're looking at a picture of all of the lottery picks. I think these are the lottery picks, right? Or the guys who were in the green room, one or the other.
Green room, yeah.
And the green room. Oh, look, there's Mike Sweetney. Hi, Mike. From the 2003 draft, which was LeBron, Melo, Bosh, Wade, and they just look stunning. Who wins this one? Melo? No, who's that next to Melo?
That's what I was just gonna say.
I'm going to find it out.
Whoever is next to Melo, that is by far the greatest suit. 100%. Pinstripe jacket down to the quads. It's
a big jacket. It's a lot of jacket.
It looks like a raincoat that was repurposed into a suit, or vice versa. A suit jacket that was repurposed into a raincoat.
Actually, Kirk Heinrich looks like he's wearing the suit that like the gentleman to his left it should be wearing.
Potentially, although Kirk Heinrich looks like he's going to a bar mitzvah. So, like, I mean,
you've been to more than me, so you would know.
I would know. He looks like he's going to a bar mitzvah, but the tan suits in the back, Chris Bosh,
love the tan.
Rocking it. Or more of a beige, I guess. It's a glorious photo, and a lot of blues, a lot of grays.
And then LeBron, RJ, of course, in white. Of course,
well, had to stand out. But like, think about RJ wearing a pink suit, and in comparison to just the sheer amount of color, we've grown, or maybe we've receded.
No.
For fashion,
we've grown. Yes, it is draft season, though.
Yes, it is. So now that we have discussed an elite photo, why don't we go to the stats? So let's just talk about common themes for the Knicks in terms of their drafting, right? So for starters, all 6 picks that the Knicks have made under this current administration are over the age of 20 years old. Now, does that mean that the Knicks will only take players who are 20 or above?
I did not realize that.
No. Does it mean that they have, like, if they had the opportunity to pick first overall in either draft classes, or I guess all 3, would they only go towards someone because they're older? Of course not. It's a common theme. Maybe it continues, maybe it doesn't, but it seems like they like players who are a little bit further along in the curve of their development. Whereas the last administration, it was, I guess you could say even 2 administrations ago, Frank Ntilikina, who was very raw. Kevin Knox, who was all about potential. These guys with super high ceilings, but their floor was maybe a bit more in question.
Kristaps.
Yeah. Although, Kristaps was a top 4, and
he was top pick, but like don't forget, there was before that draft, it was like this, skinny Latvian kid who in theory is great, but like, can he do it?
Yes. The only thing I'm thinking is Cat was a freshman, as was D'Lo, Jaleel Okafor, excuse me. Porzingis, Hazonia might have been 19, 18. So I think the oldest guy really might have been Willie Cauley-Stein.
Yeah. Which there were rumors, but yeah.
There were. But so that's just something to consider. They tend to like prospects who are a little bit older. Knicks have drafted 4 guards, and interestingly enough, they are all off the dribble threats. Offensive box plus minus. It's a stat that exists in the NBA as well. But collegiately, it's something that is of note, and I will explain why, but it's something to keep in mind. And then trading up versus trading down. With the Obi pick, they tried to trade up to 5. They didn't do it. Then they tried trading up for what seemed like Tyrese Maxey at 21. They went to 23 by packaging 27 and 38. Didn't get to Maxey. Then went 23 to 25, picking up an extra second round pick. And then traded the other second round pick that they had, the Pistons one, and traded out from there. Tried to trade up for Duarte. Then they stayed put, traded out. Then
I was about
down.
to say, it really should be traded up, trading down, trading out.
Right. It's like they are what you would imagine for a 2K GM, which is a lot of fun if you're a fan of chaos, which I am, because why not? It's entertainment, and the Knicks seem to do okay from it, but time will obviously tell. So that's kind of just where the Knicks have been. And I feel like with 2 drafts, we have a much better understanding of what the Knicks like, what they maybe don't like as much, and some of the criteria they base their decisions on.
Three quick things. One, that was Jarvis Hayes in the suit. Shout out to Jarvis Hayes. Number 2, all the picks being older than 20. I think there is something there, but I think the thing that is there is that this regime likes the notion of drafting guys who are ready to potentially contribute sooner rather than later. Jacobitis. One day I will learn how to pronounce his name. I think
it's Jokibitis.
Jokibitis?
I think the J might be silent.
Jokibitis.
Like yogging. Yeah.
It's like an interesting corollary to that, where it's like they could kick the can down the road. So I guess maybe put him aside, although he played and contributed this year, just not in the NBA. And then the third thing is that I wonder, and maybe we'll find out in a month. I wonder how much that would change if they felt there was somebody really, really special on the board. And like, again, a lot of fans last year wanted, whether it was Keon Johnson or Jalen Johnson. I'm trying to think of like someone else that was available in that, if you want to go down, like Sharif Cooper,
Isaiah Jackson.
Like all these guys. I want, like, people are like, oh, the Knicks don't care about long-term investment in terms of talent and like taking like the higher ceiling. I wonder if that philosophy would change if it was someone like a little bit higher caliber of bigger ceiling, but not quite ready yet. So those are my opening thoughts.
Definitely possible. But I feel like we could then use that and kind of look at the offensive player roles that the Knicks have sort of tried to demonstrate to the best their abilities, right? And there could be more added to this, but I feel like this is sort of the direction we could look at, right? So
player roles by position.
By position, exactly. So when we're talking about a point guard, right? It seems the biggest thing that the Knicks want is someone who slashes and drives. Ideally, they are a scorer. They're a pull-up shooter. They can play off the ball by catching and shooting, spotting up. They make plays. They run pick and roll, and they kind of improvise when necessary. Obviously, not all of those can be attributed to a player like Elfrid Payton. But I think the slashing portion of this goes to show why it is so key and why the Knicks reluctantly did bring him back in the first place, because he got to the rim. What he did at the rim, different story. We don't have to talk about it, but there's a continued trend of let's get players to drive the lane, and then we can kind of work from there. At the 2, right? It's pull-up shooting. It's catch and shooting. Players who have high 3-point attempt rates and who are maybe more connectors. I think the reason why Reggie Bullock, and shout out to him for winning the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar award.
Very cool honor. Well deserved.
100%, and awesome causes that he has. In terms of like why he may not have been brought back wasn't able to create a whole lot. Didn't really connect as much. The ball kind of ended up in his hands, and if it was an offensive possession, he'd be shooting it. And if you think about what Evan Fournier does, it's much more of like pull up from 3. It's a little bit less than he's done in the past. He's more catch and shoot than he had really been in the last few years. But he takes a lot of these threes, and he's a good secondary playmaker. And so him kind of connecting to others, I think is an important factor.
And we should also note that, like, the Knicks, I think let me take a step back. What we have seen from players, or what they have seen from players, and this I think goes to draft picks too, may be different from what the Knicks foresee a player being able to do. So we shouldn't just go by what a player has done already. For instance, the reason I'm thinking of this is Fournier. Fournier's role changed a lot this year from when he was in Orlando. He did a lot more stuff inside the arc this season. He even spoke about it openly. It's just about, look, if I'm behind the arc, I got to shoot it. If I have to put the ball on the floor, I put the ball on the floor, make the next, make the rim read or whatever. So it's more about potentially than what they've done already.
Exactly. And then at the 3, you have scoring, you have slashing, playmaking, and catch and shoot. I mean, really what RJ does is a lot of those things. I had originally thought that, and RJ has said he wants to work on pull-up shooting. Maybe Cam Reddish is doing the same, but I thought that might be a more key attribute at the 3 for Knicks players. And now I'm starting to think it could just be the backcourt where that's really much more of a focus. The other positions, 3, 4, 5, might be less about off the dribble shooting, but it's still good that he's working on it because you need good pull-up shooters, and the best stars in the NBA.
Yep.
Most of them are really good pull-up shooters.
Have to have it.
Exactly. And at the 4, it's more secondary or tertiary playmaking. They're also more of a connector. They can score if need be. And they also improvise too. Like Obi is a great improviser. Julius is not as much, but his ability to make plays is really good. It's just oftentimes you can find him forcing it or throwing a live grenade to someone and then they have to make do with something. Like he's able to think at a higher level, but then his judgment gets clouded to the point where he might turn the ball over. So, but at least in terms of getting that at the power forward position, or, from a big, having someone who can play in that way is important. And then at the 5, it's really simple. It's just a rim runner who can finish at the rim and rebound, especially in the offensive end.
Yeah.
Typically offense.
Typically 100%. I would say, this is not earth shattering news here. In terms of the types, I think, and this goes back to, actually, I would say the only true Tibbs trend throughout his entire career has been point guards. He likes point guards that can drive the lane. His backup point guards are often smaller guys who could create, do maybe a little bit more. When Quickly was, I think he said when Quickly was drafted, he said he reminds me of a lot of the smaller guards we had back in Chicago, and you could throw, Tyus Jones in there from his days in Minnesota. In any case, definite type for the 1 with the Knicks, definite type for the 5. I would say that you're similar with the 2, although not as much as the 1 or the 5 for me. I think the 3 or the 4, I wonder how much of our idea of what a typical Knicks 4-man or even a typical Knicks 3-man does do or can do or should do is skewed by the fact that Mitch, the only 2 players that have been here for the entire time have been Julius and RJ. And obviously Julius, once Tibbs arrived, kind of gave the keys and then that lasted into last season. So, but yeah, no, they definitely have a type by and large.
Yeah. And I agree. The backcourt and the 5 are the easiest to identify solidly of what they like. I don't want to say the jury's out on the 3-4 because when you look at Julius and you look at Obi and how there is that overlap, and then you look at RJ and Cam and it's closer. Not closer to Julius and Obi, but still close, that it gives the impression that they kind of like these players in these roles.
And outside of the 5, which again, maybe we shouldn't even say, we talked about this last week a lot with they wanted Noel to hit corner threes and Taj hit a billion corner threes towards the end. So putting that position aside specifically, they want guys to shoot. Guys come in, I'm pretty sure almost every player to a man has spoken in some way, shape, or form about the Knicks, told me to go home and work on my shooting this summer. Julius obviously made a commitment to that 2 years ago, and up and down the roster, you could see guys, and look, they were 10th in threes this year, something like that, which it
was high.
It was very high.
Might have even been higher, but
but compared to where they were when Tibbs got here specifically, it's night and day. They've made big leaps in that area. So that's, I would say, just a generalization we could probably make too.
Exactly. So this is one thing that I wanted to show, and this was from Jonathan Wasserman, which he did this for the last 2 years. It was really...
I remember this from last year.
Yes. So there is a pull-up shooting chart that he has, and Wasserman mapped out the pinpoints of where these players finished in terms of the pull-up jumpers made per game and the pull-up shooting points per possession in the half court. And if you're watching this, I have put a circle, or I guess it's more of an oval around.
It's an oval.
It's an oval around names that are relevant. And so there's a name that I'm not going to circle or oval, and that is Max Asmus. It looks like Abmas, but it's pronounced Asmus. And the reason is because Max Asmus is a phenomenal pull-up shooter, like out of this world, but he's so small that he's not in the conversation of really any NBA buzz.
And this is last year, to be clear.
This is last year, but he did return to school.
Okay.
Right. So
got it.
Right. But if you're watching, you will see that basically players who are towards the top right, which is where you want to be, it means, you've got more pull-up jumpers made per game and you're converting them. It's players like Deuce McBride, Quentin Grimes, two players the Knicks wound up drafting.
As well as Chris Duarte, who's also within a little oval.
Exactly, who the Knicks were very interested in acquiring. Yeah. You then have Trey Mann, right? He was
Terrence Mann.
Terrence Mann, right. Trey Mann plays for the Clippers. Terrence Mann, who Ian Begley reported the Knicks had interest in. You've got Cade Cunningham, who, of course, the Knicks would have absolutely taken first overall. And then another interesting name here is Buddy Boeheim, obviously of the Syracuse fame. Boeheim returned to school, and then just past week, he worked out for the Knicks and two other teams and hit 71 of 83s. So he's a name just to keep in mind. I don't know if the Knicks will go with him or not, but someone where if he were to do a more extensive workout, maybe he's doing the Jazz 100. Walt Perrin's patented 3-point shooting of hoisting up 100 threes and after a heavy workout. But that's the region to keep in mind specifically for guards. And, you're going to see other names that are here that they clearly passed on. But for some of these players, it might not matter as much. But if we go to this season, right, basically, there aren't a ton of lottery names that are really in that quadrant, right? Like you got Johnny Davis, who hit a ton of pull-up jumpers, but he also took fewer. He made a lot, I should say, but the points per possession were maybe a little less than normal. But then it's really just guys who aren't going to be lottery names. Like there's some names below it, right? Like Branham, Ty Washington for sure. But then like you see someone like Paolo Banchero, and the Knicks may not care as much. They're not going to get Paolo anyway because he's going to go top 3. More on that later. But like if they were in the position, they might not really care because pull-up jumpers might not be the thing that drives them for a player who can really master the 4. And there's some other names there too that might be relevant. But it's kind of interesting to see that it's not a science. It's just looking at overlap and what might be of interest, and if that's an area they wanted to go. If not, there are obviously other extenuating factors. There's the eye test, so many other things, but kind of something to keep in mind because it's clearly something they like with the backcourt.
Yeah, and they're probably not going to be able to get it at 11.
What, Johnny Davis?
No, I'm saying they're probably not going to get, other than Johnny Davis, they're probably not going to be able to get a big time pull-up shooter at 11.
Probably not.
Yeah,
that's fair. So offensive box plus minus, excuse me. I wanted to take a look at the last 2 years for this example. So if you look at the 2019-2020 season, obviously cut short due to COVID. The number one player both the last 2 draft classes was Luka Garza. But some interesting names just for the 2020 season. Peyton Pritchard finished 3rd in college. Obi Toppin finished 4th. Vernon Carey finished 5th. Jalen Smith finished 6th. And that's really in terms of like the top 10 names that are probably relevant for this. And then 2021, it's Kispert finishing 2nd. Then you have Chris Duarte finishing 8th and Quentin Grimes finishing 10th. So for starters, the 2 first-round picks, the 2 first round picks that the Knicks made each year, technically speaking, I guess you could say that, were top 10 guys. And then it's also interesting because a reason why the Knicks may have traded out of the 33rd pick in the 2020 season.
This was reported by Mark Berman.
Yes, indeed, that Vernon Carey was the guy they're looking for. Carey was taken 32nd. That would certainly match up with interest. And then
there was also a Peyton Pritchard rumor, if I recall.
There was, yes. And Pritchard, wasn't he? I believe he was on the board still when they managed to take quickly. I think he was taken 27th. Something like that.
I'll double check it, but I remember there was reporting, I believe, from your own Weissman about there was also significant interest in Pritchard, potentially. Well, there was other connections too, but yeah, they were interested. They were definitely reported to have been interested in Pritchard.
Right. And now you might be thinking, well, they drafted other players. Yeah, again, it's not a science, but Deuce McBride had a really strong offensive box plus minus. It just wasn't top 10, so it's not showing. Quickly really picked it up in the second part of the season. He came off the bench for some time. The season was cut short, so it can be a little tricky to fully determine it, but I think it's relevant. And then when you look at this year, there are 3 guys that stand out. Keegan Murray, who finished first, Tari Eason, who finished third, and EJ Liddell, who finished 6th. And I also noted that each player is, not expected, they will be over the age of 20 years old on draft night.
Very interesting.
Again, it may not even be any of these 3 players. Like EJ isn't expected to go in the lottery. Keegan Murray is expected or projected maybe to go top 5, top 7. Maybe he slides. I don't know. Tari Eason, his range could fluctuate. It could be late lottery. It could be.
Yeah, I've seen Eason. I feel like his teens is probably the most comfortable place to put Tari Eason at this point. And then Murray's fast. So for anybody who's like listening to this and be like, I don't know who any of these people are. There's a definitive top 3 in this draft. 3 guys who are kind of, I don't know, different versions of a 4-man for the modern game. And then you got Jaden Ivey, exciting kid out of Purdue. Probably 4th securely, although Shaden Sharp is coming for that 4th spot. Maybe we'll touch on him in a bit. He's the kind of the mystery man of the draft who didn't play in Kentucky. And then there's Keegan Murray, but Keegan Murray, unlike Sharp, and maybe even unlike Ivy, and maybe even unlike some of the guys in the top 3, is viewed a lot of how the talk about him, not in terms of player type, but in terms of just the discussion about him, reminds me a lot about the talk about Obi Toppin from 2 years ago, in terms of like, you know what you're getting. He's going to come in. He's going to contribute right away. Maybe a little bit of a lower ceiling, but a definitive floor. And you're going to see that floor from day one.
Exactly. And I should add, one of the things that gets left out of this discussion entirely, players who are not in college, right? Like, it's hard for us to use tracking data from college and incorporate Dyson Daniels or Ousmane Dieng or really any other international player, any
Sharp, who's there's no data from anywhere.
We're looking at EYBL and high school. So it's not a science, but it's giving us as much intel looking at the past drafts and overlap that kind of work into play here.
But do me a favor, go back to the previous slide for just a half a second. Keegan Murray was this year head and shoulders above everybody else in offensive box plus minus. The last 2 years, guys, Luka Garza had a decent lead, I guess, last season, but like you can go back to Murray now. I mean, it's not the gap. It really does feel, and the number 13, like that's a big number.
It is.
So yeah,
3.5 points ahead of next best player, who is Oscar Tshiebwe, and he was he's an older guy. He's returning to Kentucky. Just doesn't feel like he's ready for the draft.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. So, could be an option for any team, really. But yeah,